Hey guys, so Infinite Forbidden format is right around the corner. Obviously, pretty exciting in terms of all the number of changes that it will bring, although of course a little bit scary at the same time, but nonetheless, as a branded player, I was pretty interested in this new Light and Darkness Dragon Lord that's coming out in terms of how we could utilize it, because, you know, this deck can actually summon it pretty consistently compared to some of the other decks out there, I'm sure. So I figured, you know what, let's go through some of the ways to make it, and also just go over some replays for post-info format in terms of, you know, whether this is worthwhile to play. In terms of the actual deck list shown here, I wouldn't pay too much attention to it. It's not necessarily optimized for info format. I just kind of slapped something together just for the sake of this replay video. Another thing I did want to mention is for the purpose of this video, let's just pretend Sanctifire is banned, and so we're not going to do the gimmick lock. Realistically, if you want to bring out this guy turn one anyways, you can't really prioritize both. So you know what, just keep that in mind. It's not that I forgot about Sanctifier, I'm just assuming that it's gone. So here, in terms of how you make it, the most probably easiest way is through Branded Banishment, which is a card that hasn't been seeing that much play in this deck. Sometimes you see it here and there because it's really good in the mirror as well, because this will essentially use the Lubellion on the field as well as the Albion to make LADD on the opponent's turn, and we're going to get to that in terms of the replays. And it's also because, you know, because this also negates whatever you activate as well, not just your opponent. It's like the original LADD, right? So, you know, you have to make sure this is like the last thing you do, and then you just kind of sit on it. You don't want to activate anything after that, basically. So that's why it's nice with Banishment. You can technically make it with Branded in red as well, and also Branded in white will be another easy way, especially when you kind of prioritize having maximizing the copy of Shredded Dragon, because it is a level 8 dark dragon. Something to keep in mind though is that with Albion or Lubellion, you actually cannot make LADD because they actually can only summon level 8 or lower fusion monsters, and this thing is definitely not level 8, that's for sure. So keep those things in mind, and then let's just get to the replays. Alright, so let's start with the first replay, which is unfortunately against Flunder, and you know, there's going to be a Dark Ruler coming my way, which I don't know at the time, obviously, and we're going to talk about that when it comes specifically to LADD. We're going to dump the Merc off of Quem, because in this instance with this hand, we have a hard-drawn Albaz, which means this also allows a Dark to be banished off Albion, but we can also add Cortesia that we can summon, because we hard-drew that Albaz that we can pitch. So now we have the Lubellion here, and we can get the loss. We can special the Cortesia now. One thing to keep in mind is because of the way we're trying to get into LADD, we unfortunately now have to keep that Lubellion on the field, whereas normally it was an expendable body after it got you the loss, because you do need it for summoning LADD. So that's the downside. In this case, at least Quem can bring back the Mirror Jade. We had the Merc here, and we're going to talk about this as well, which is something I quickly learned after getting hit with, or rather just having LADD on board. This is my very first time summoning it in this very replay. So we're going to add back the Cortesia for end, and then we're going to shotgun the Banishment in draw phase, and this is how you summon out LADD, the easiest way at the very least. We can also add, quick comment, you can add off of loss, because this only negates activation of spells and traps, not the activation of effects of face-up spells and traps, which I'm sure for newer players that's probably a little confusing, but you know what, you're going to get the hang of it. You'll quickly realize Yu-Gi-Oh! Doesn't make too much sense. I guess I could have actually went Quem 1, loss 2, just to like chain block myself from LADD, but there was nothing worthwhile summoning off of the grave anyways. So we are hit with Dark Ruler. This is where it gets really funny that I didn't take into account. So because even if it's negated, it's going to keep trying to attempt to negate the activation, so it actually chain blocks myself from being able to use Merc, which is really funny. Or really, any hand trap that you have that you can only respond directly to, something like, let's say, Ash Bell, you're always going to chain block yourself with LADD on the field now, which gets really annoying. So I'm forced to use Fusion Dupe to try to get into something like Dragostapelia, but yeah, I'm a little bit too late, because Merc would have been really nice here just to negate that first body. So he's going to be able to go Eaglin. I like to Quem even when it's negated, just as a habit, to chain block myself from something like Bell. Obviously in this case LADD was already chain blocking anyways. This was also a mistake. This should have been in defense mode. I got a little trigger finger happy with EDO Pro Simulator. We are going to bring back the Albaz, because we do have Titanic Cloud left that we can fuse off the M-Pen with. He is going to Advent to try to dodge that, but you know what? We do get M-Pen off the field, which means Drago is now back live again. He does have the field spell, and then Uncle Toucan, so now Merc at least is live, and then we can also try to negate, but then he has the new one. I believe this was from, I can't even remember the set anymore, but it was earlier this year. Now has extra ways to at least play around it, but realistically I think at this point he kind of burned through his resources. He does have Featherstone, which doesn't really do anything. The Albaz doesn't matter for us either. It actually clears up our board spot, anything. There was no reason for me to trigger Mirror Jade, honestly, but at this point I already had game, so we're just going to go straight into battle and then attack. Okay, so next let's go against White Woods, which is another new strategy you're gonna have to get used to post Infinite Forbidden. He does have droplets though, so sorry that I can't show LADD working so far, but I still wanted to cover this too, especially because you're gonna have to get used to Dark Ruler and Droplet a lot post Info format. So that's one of the reasons where I'm actually not as happy with LADD here. The other thing is I should have also I should have mentioned, I should have actually chained the Cortesia effect to the Lubellion there, even though normally you actually want to save it until you get the Lost and then fuse, so you can add off of Lost. But the problem is, again, you have to keep that Lubellion on the field for banishment to work to get to LADD, so that's where I learned to not do that for the next time. So at least, you know, these are things you kind of learn on the fly as you play. And then now we are going to add the Retribution because we do have Super Poly, and then we're just going to try to set up our usual Lost rather banishment to Light and Darkness Dragon play. So he's gonna go with the Asteria. He's gonna try to summon a tuner. We're hit with droplets. I guess the only maybe argument to at least it being worthwhile is that it kind of forces them to discard another card for droplet, I guess, but really just not worth it at that point. It's just hasn't been too impressive in all the replays that I've been doing. Maybe I just got unlucky because I got hit with Dark Ruler or droplet like literally 80% of the games that I've been trying to test to get some replays with. He does have the toy box. This stuff is actually kind of cool, and so just the way they work, you know, in terms of discarding. Oh, also I should make a note. The reason why I shotgun Super Poly is because I can't read. For some reason, I thought this was some kind of trigger where it was destroying my spell and trap, so I thought I had to. But clearly, I just cannot read, and that's why I think wasted a Super Poly there. So anyways, he's going to be able to add a couple more cards. Pretty synchro heavy. I think this is usually played with like runic stuff because they do tend to discard their spell traps with the Whitewood stuff, and I guess getting runic spells into the grave kind of maximizes that draw 3. They have some pretty cool synchro plays as well. This is just going to attribute itself, I believe, to summon another one from grave, bring back that back. This one, it seems like its specials on essentially it responds to anything that I do. This one also inflicts double piercing and also Book of Eclipses my side of the field, which is pretty cool. The double piercing is actually kind of significant. I almost died, but luckily I do survive because these guys, the bodies are quite big. Chaos Angel gets rid of my LADD, so really didn't get to use too much of that there. He goes in Despia. This is a mistake getting rid of Mirror Jade. I'm not sure if he knew, A, that it's no longer considered an activated effect to destroy Chaos Angel, but B, because he is a turn player, he has to trigger his mandatory effects before I have to trigger my mandatory effects. So now we're just going to sequence things so that we go into Mirror Jade and then trigger the Mirror Jade. So if you're playing Branded, you have to be pretty mindful of all the end phase triggers and how you sequence them, and also priority as well. So we do take it here, even though both times I got hit with Dark Ruler or Droplet on LADD. Alright, so now let's actually show a replay where the LADD actually does some work at least. So here we have a bit of an awkward hand where we hard do the Retribution, so we have to kind of summon out this way, just so we can go into Branded Fusion, dump Serenir, dump Branded Fusion. This is where when you get Ash, you kind of just cry because it's a very vulnerable hand, but those are things that you kind of get used to when you play this deck. But now we can just set up our typical banishment play. I should also note, for the sake of these replays, I'm basically, even though let's say sometimes with Branded Red, for example, is a better play, I'm just always going for banishment for the sake of these replays, just to get some testing in, bringing out this LADD guy. So we're going to get back the Cortesia. I should have mentioned this is against Fiendsmith Yubel, which is one of the decks you're obviously going to have to be mindful of with this info format, because this is going to be a tier 1 contender for sure, and one of the better ones. Cashier cards actually eat into LADD quite well, especially Fenrir, because essentially I think you can actually go through all of it, but you do have to sacrifice the battle phase. He does have the Dark Beckoning Beast, so at this point, also keep in mind, one thing I want to highlight here, even though it doesn't have enough attack to negate anymore, it will continue to keep triggering every time. So that's why, where I mentioned earlier, with you basically chain blocking yourself, so I'm potentially using hand traps against your opponent, you have to keep that in mind when this thing is on the field, like all the time. So he's gonna go talents. We're gonna at least banish the Unicorn. He takes the Mirror Jade, which is fine. We actually still have Super Poly as well. He's gonna get the Fiendsmith Tractus. We're gonna be seeing this a lot post info format. Discard Lori. Lori's gonna summon, and this gets really annoying in an automated simulator, that's for sure. Don't forget to use Granular Effect whenever that's optimal. We're gonna use I dumped Cortesia by mistake here. I shouldn't have, because I already had the Cortesia in hand, so that's a misplay. But at the very least, we can go into Drago, and also Quem can bring back that Mirror Jade, so that's kind of nice. So we do still take it from there, and at least LADD ate a few cards there. Alright, so next is Infernoid. This actually got some support post Battles of Legend, and you know what? I've faced against this a couple times now. It's actually kind of funny, or rather, it's pretty cool. I haven't played against this basically in like 5 years. That was the last time you even saw this at like a rogue level. It was topping some random events here and there. But you know what? Their new support, it does give some extra like have draw power. They're also fire and also fiend, which kind of helps them out, I'm sure, moving forward in the new format. And this is kind of nothing new, and now I mentioned about that chaining Cartesia now on the Lubellion, just for the sake of keeping that Bestial Lubellion on the field, even though you don't get to maximize on that Law Search. But you know what, at least at this point we can at least set up the LADD. We hard drew the banishment, so we could set up Branded in red as well, and then we also get to summon out the Quem, and then bring out the Albas. I don't think there was much to do there. And so here, we're going to, again, just shotgun everything. We are going to be hit with the droplet again, though, and it's a very common theme. I think if you're just going to have to get used to that during info format. So we're going to try to eat the negate. Doesn't have to negate too many cards, because I guess he wanted to be able to draw multiple, which means Quem is actually alive, which is actually pretty strong for us, keeping that not negated. And so here we are going to just trigger and then go with the Quem effect. Albas can just fuse away that witch. And again, this just gets really annoying with the auto sim very fast. It's pretty annoying. But anyways, we do take that there. So next we have Trickstar. I don't think there's any kind of new support really that made this player decide to play this deck. But you know what, this one was a bit of a troll one where I essentially make LADD 2 separate occasions. I kind of wanted to see whether it's like recursive at all. I mean, you can always kind of do that with janky ways with Lubellion basically. But you know what, this one is just more so for fun. And then again, we're just setting up the usual line of play with banishment to set up LADD. So opponent has multiple draw cards though. We do set up the LADD here. We just don't even bother adding Merc anymore because it's just almost never going to be live as long as it stays on the field because it keeps chain blocking you. At least this time LADD actually resolves and can eat up some cards. This field spell was actually pretty good back in the Nightmare Mermaid days because it gives you a couple free bodies essentially. Now he gets to have some draw stuff, which is actually kind of nice going into LADD. You at least have some multiple options now, and this can add the Candia, I believe, Candina, and then this will add usually, well, I guess he's adding the monster here. The Trickstar Reincarnation is plus draw is always kind of like the standard combo for Trickstar basically. So he is able to attack over LADD now, which saves me some time not having to respond to every single trigger. Unfortunately, this goes to great because I was not able to activate it based on the field spell, which has always been pretty interesting nonetheless. I probably should have just banished the one of the Licorices early, just to prevent myself from getting taxed multiple times. It's been a while since I faced against Trickstar. I definitely underestimated how much burn damage I quickly take. So here we draw opening, which is not great since we already had one. Again, I just end up banishing one of them, which I should have done sooner, save myself a little bit of extra life points. So we just keep taking burn damage. We're going to go with the Guardian Chimera play just to pop everything, or at least the ones that matter. And then I'll quickly tell you about why this is a bit of a jank replay. So we just keep taking burn damage. Took quite a lot now at this point. So we have Branded Fusion play. So we actually, of course, could have easily OTK'd. This one cannot attack directly because of Branded Red. But if you just go like, something like opening Quem, and then, Albion summons another fusion monster, and Quem would bring back another body. That's easily enough game. I just want to try to see, are there ways to try to, set up LADD multiple times if there ever is a reason to. Probably not, realistically. Again, I should have just done opening first, just to get the Quem and bring out an extra body. But you know what? It's okay. We're just kind of doing some random testing here. We do let him live. And then because we didn't use Tragedy's effect intentionally, we just set that Branded Banishment. The problem was I thought I had a Despian monster, or rather, I guess I kind of messed up the way the setup was going to work. So, but it kind of works out sort of unintentionally. I do at least bring back this guy, and then here because he attacks into Quem, now I have a Despia target. I can make the LADD again. So don't take this replay seriously. This one was just definitely janky. Right, so next we have one against Resonator. So this one, unfortunately, I'm going to be hit with Dark Ruler again. Sorry that I can't have many replays where LADD actually does something. It's just been so common. Like I said, actually 80% of my replays where I set up LADD going first, I got hit with Dark Ruler or drop it. It's been very, very common in everyone's list as I've been testing for post-info format. So we're going to basically kind of do the unconventional way of getting Branded Fusion yet again, and then we'll just do that and set up the banishment and also LADD play. So we're going to pitch the thrust since clearly he hasn't been hand trapping us. If he Nibiru's us, yeah, that would have been nice to keep, but it's okay. And then we also have Super Poly again, and then we are just going to set up the banishment. So the reason I want to show this replay too is just because LADD actually does have a second effect. Doesn't really come up that much here, but at least I wanted to show that. So we are hit with Dark Ruler. Unfortunately, we don't have Branded Opening Engrave, so we are going to get absolutely destroyed by Raigeki here. So Prosperity is also pretty nice, although it does mean that we are going to survive. Actually, I guess he used Dark Ruler, so we weren't going to take damage to begin with. So at this point, we're going to be hit with the Regeki, but it does have that second effect when it's sent to the graveyard. It can revive another dragon. So if you actually had Fallen of Albaz, and let's say your opponent had some other monsters that you could fuse with, that could actually potentially come up in the grind game. We just have Albion, which is kind of not great, but at the same time we have Super Poly, so technically it actually could come up where you go into like a Mirror Jade once your opponent commits to like an extra deck monster, for example. In this instance, we don't really have to because we just happen to have Quem, which can just bring this back. And so he's going to try to, I believe, Synchro. So I just get rid of the tuner. He has talents, which this Quem turns out to be a tuner. But we are able to Super Poly that off. This was supposed to be a Quartus, but I guess I kept it as Masquerade for this replay. Okay, so the final one, it's more so for me when you're going second. That probably doesn't really come up making LADD, but I at least wanted to show that sometimes it's potentially possible. So this is Dinomorphia, which is actually a solid rogue option right now. It's actually topped a couple of events so far. We're going to go Merc. Dinomorphia is definitely kind of a tricky one because of its like sort of like built-in Mystic Mind. But Branded Despia, if you play Masquerade, it can actually be pretty strong. And Super Poly also goes quite hard. And so he ends up just scooping, which is unfortunate. But if you kind of think about it, you do have ways to go make LADD going second because this, for example, these two already, that makes LADD. If you have a way to discard Shroud Dragon with Branded Opening, for example, or let's say with like High Spirits, and that's better because then you can actually use Lubellion's effect as well, you know, search something Abyssal, and then because this is Albaz and Grave, you can actually use Branded White and just banish these two from the graveyard instead, and then make the LADD, which is definitely, you get to maximize your resources, and not to mention, especially in a situation like Dinomorphia, where they're going to essentially, this is going to eat through multiple negates, unless he had a counter trap, which he didn't happen to have. He's going to lose a lot of life in Super Poly for game, pretty strong. Alright guys, so that was it for the testing for a post-info format with Branded featuring Light and Darkness Dragonlord. Let me know what you think about this card for the new format. I mean, you know what, if Sanctifire is banned, yeah, sure, I'm sure I'll at least give it a bit more try with this card, but other than that, I think I am a little bit disappointed with this card in terms of how it actually works well with Branded. I think, you know, we have like some pretty good plays with like Branded Red, for example, where it doesn't lose as hard to like something like Dark Ruler, for example, because this can kind of come later as like a layered interruption, whereas you're kind of committing more into that board if you just go with the Banishment Shotgun and set this up, and as I mentioned, kind of chain blocking yourself from being able to use something like Merc or other hand traps that you might play that can be disruptive. It is a little bit unfortunate, but you know what, I think it has some pretty decent potential. As long as Sanctifire is legal, I think we would just keep going with the gimmick lock for now, but nonetheless, I'm really excited to hear your guys' opinions. But anyways, huge thanks to all of you for watching this video. Big thanks to my patrons and sponsors for the continued support, and well, take care guys.